The Mojave Desert can look endless from above, all pale rock, broken sun, and silence. But for two hikers in July 2017, that silence became something else entirely. 3 months after going missing, their bodies were found under a tree and left everyone with more questions than answers. Welcome to Morbid Outdoors, the podcast that ventures deep into the shadows of the wild. Here, we unravel the mysteries of missing persons, explore spine chilling legends, and share the most morbid stories that nature has to offer. From the depths of the dense forests to the highest mountain peaks, we'll uncover the secrets that lie hidden in the great outdoors. Join us as we navigate the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifying. So if you dare, grab your gear and let's embark on a journey into the unknown. This is Morbid Outdoors. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Oh, let me adjust my mic. Oops. So I hope you guys are all having a great day. It is almost Christmas time if you celebrate. There are a lot of holidays being celebrated this month by various cultures, and I celebrate Christmas, and I'm so excited to spend it with family and enjoy some snow. So I hope that you guys are all celebrating and getting in the spirit of whatever holiday you are celebrating. My name is Elise, and I'm your host, and thanks so much for tuning in today. So, we are going to be discussing a pretty grisly case today. Yeah, this happened in Joshua Tree, and let's just dive right in. So, negative reviews. Someone said, absolutely the worst national park as far as signage, information, and education of staff goes, at least on the north side. Wasted so much time trying to find the visitor centers, entrances, and signs that we skipped going through it to the south side. Typical, stereotypical government agency ineptitude at its extent. First one star I have ever given a national park. Well, apparently they did not find any of the scenery beautiful at all. This next person said, fail to understand why this is even considered a national park. It could have been some other status, but disappointing for a national park. Sparse looking trees will force you to get out in 2 to 3 hours max. So I don't know, that review, they're just mad, honestly, and it's fine. And then this next one, I was not impressed. I've seen more Joshua trees at Lake Mead and the Grand Canyon. Cool rock formations, and that's about it. And then our last negative review says, after spending 2 weeks traveling to California's national parks, this was our least favorite. Not much to see. Very desolate and repetitive landscape. Also, yes, Joshua Tree, I think for a lot of people can be underwhelming. I have actually been, and actually, 5 years ago, I spent Christmas Day hiking in Joshua Tree National Park with a Santa hat. So, it is a very interesting park if you let it be, A lot of national parks that people go to are like Yosemite and the Grand Canyon and, like, the very, very huge and, like, very talked up ones. But Joshua Tree is really underrated in my opinion. As I've recently started, we're going to do our land acknowledgement for Joshua Tree National Park. We acknowledge the lands encompassed by today's Joshua Tree National Park are the ancestral homelands of the Chemehueve, Cahuilla, Serrano, and Mojave peoples. These indigenous communities have lived with, traveled through, and care for this desert landscape since time immemorial. We honor their enduring relationship with the Joshua Tree region, its canyons, springs, night skies, and sacred places, and we recognize their ongoing presence, cultural knowledge, and stewardship of these lands. All right, so let's get into talking about Joshua Tree. I just covered it, I think, last month on a haunted park, so I'm just going to briefly go over some interesting facts about this national park. Joshua Tree was established as a national park on October 31st, 1994, so Halloween of 94. It was originally declared a national monument in 1936. And then when California passed the Desert Protection Act in 1994, it then became a national park. It's 795,156 acres, and almost half of this is designated wilderness. So there are no roads, there's no infrastructure. It is legit just desert. The park encompasses portions of two deserts, each with a unique ecosystem with characteristics determined primarily by elevation. The higher one is the Mojave Desert, and the lower lying one is the Colorado Desert. The earliest known residents of the land in and around what later became Joshua Tree National Park were the people of the Pinto culture, who lived and hunted here between 8,000 and 4,000 BCE. Their stone tools and spear points, discovered in the Pinto Basin in the 1930s, suggest that they hunted game and gathered seasonal plants, but really little else is known about these people. So let's talk about the climate. It is hot, hot, hot. And it's still pretty warm even in the winter. So when I visited on Christmas Day in 2020, it was actually, it was cold in the morning, like a desert normally is, but it was then got up to be like in the 60s and 70s, and it was really nice. But in the summer, it has a hot desert climate. So Joshua Tree is actually becoming hotter and drier due to climate change. From 1895 to 2016, the annual precipitation has dropped by 39%, and the annual temperature has increased by 3 degrees Fahrenheit. Because of the hotter and drier conditions, there are more wildfires in this park. And I honestly don't understand why a lot of people choose to visit this park in the summer because it is so hot. I don't even think it would be enjoyable. But that's just me. I don't like to be outside when it's dry heat and it's like over 100 degrees. I'm not about that life. I would rather go in the off season when it's cooler, and I could not handle the heat out there. So the heat is a big factor we're going to talk about today in this case. Now, within this national park, there are 9 established campgrounds, and there's a lot of hiking trails actually. So, a section of the California Riding and Hiking Trail meanders 35 miles or 56 kilometers through the western side of the park. There's a lot of lookouts and a lot of really cool rock formations, like Skull Rock is a really popular one. The total amount of visitors more than doubled from 2013 to 2019 because awareness of the wildflower bloom in the spring has brought increased visitation across the board. So people found out about Joshua Tree. I say found out, it's always been around, but I think with social media, it's become more popular, and so there are a ton of tourists that just descend on Joshua Tree every single year. In terms of animals, there are more than 250 bird species that inhabit or visit the park, and then there's around 2,145 combined plant, fungi, and animal species that have been documented within Joshua Tree National Park. So it's also known for its naturally dark night skies, which I can attest to, and it's basically free of light pollution. So in 2017, it was awarded to be a dark sky park by the International Dark Sky Association. It's beautiful, and when I visited, I think we woke up, I don't know, 5 or 6 AM and drove in so that we could do an early morning hike, and it was so dark, and it was so, so pretty. So, now that you know a little bit about the park, and the main thing is that it's a desert, it's hot, hot, hot during the day, and cold, cold, cold at night. This has a huge this has a lot to do with what we're gonna talk about today, and it's a really sad story, so I'll try to be as reverent as I can, but I do wanna highlight, why we should take essentials into any hike that we're doing in the outdoors. Many couples go hiking as a fun outing or on dates. And most of the time, couples go out in state parks or local hiking areas unless they just happen to live near a national park. And this was the case for 20-year-old Rachel Nguyen and 22-year-old Joseph Orbeso in July of 2017. They decided to take a short trip from their hometown to Joshua Tree National Park. Rachel was a widely traveled adventurer, and a lot of people described her as very sweet, yet really a tomboy. Like her friend said that she didn't do girly things like other girls did, and there was no such thing as serious dating. So I saw conflicting reports online if Rachel and Joseph were dating or if they were just friends. I don't know which is true because there are lots of different sources online that say both. Now, Joseph, um, basically, I don't know, was he a boyfriend or just a friend? I'm not sure. But a friend of Joseph's, whose name is Austin, he actually said that the two had previously dated. So that Rachel and Joseph had previously dated. But Rachel had a crush on another guy who was unavailable when she asked him to join her on a hike to celebrate her birthday. So basically, I don't know for sure if they were dating or not because some people say they were just friends, and I'm not sure. But what I do know is that they rented a hotel room and planned to hike out in Joshua Tree National Park. So this trip was actually to celebrate Rachel's birthday, which was July 28th. So they drove to Joshua Tree and they rented a hotel room and they set off on their hike. But the two were reported missing on July 28th when the owner of a bed and breakfast where they were registered called the sheriff's office to say that they'd failed to return after departing early on July 27th for a likely hike in the park. They left all of their belongings at the bed and breakfast slash hotel and they didn't come back. So I have to give this person props for alerting authorities so quickly because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't even think about it or maybe are not as vigilant, but this person knew that something had happened, especially in July in the desert, and they did alert police. Now, a ping from Joseph's phone was last recorded from inside the park at around 4 p.m. on July 27th. So immediately a search was launched because after the rangers in the national park received the missing persons report, the park rangers actually found the couple's unoccupied vehicle near a trailhead, according to the sheriff's office. Now, Joseph and Rachel were nowhere to be found. The car was actually found at the Maze Loop trailhead, which is a 5-mile loop trail with an elevation gain of about 400 feet. So, a lengthy hike, but with not a lot of elevation gain. So, pretty easy and pretty flat, I would say. So, this is what All Trails says. As the name suggests, it could be easy to get lost in the maze section of this trail. Cairns mark the trail along your way through this section, but the high rock walls, canyons, and boulders can sometimes make navigation confusing. It can be especially easy to get lost if you decide to scramble and explore the area off trail. It is recommended to download an offline map for peace of mind while hiking this trail. You can also bring a printed copy for backup. It goes on to say that this trail is not recommended in the summer heat due to its length and lack of shade. Make sure to bring adequate food and water supplies and proper sun protection. So, All Trails is even saying, like, hey, this could be dangerous during the summer. Please don't do it during the summer. Bring food, bring water, and it's really easy to get lost. After you leave the maze area, you can see a rock formation called Window Rock, and that's how you know that you're going to make your way back to the trailhead. The return trip of this trail is mostly flat desert floor with sections of broad sandy wash. And it's noted online that the best time to hike this trail is during winter months. It says if you decide to hike this route during the summer, use caution when hiking in the desert heat. It's a good idea to start early, like before 9 a.m. Bring plenty of water, snacks, and sun protection. There is no reliable cell service in the park, so it's a good idea to check weather and download maps ahead of your visit. Now, that was straight from the National Park Service website. So, of course, this was the searching area because this trail, like it gets its name, is a maze. Temperatures in Joshua Tree were so hot during this time. And if you get lost or don't have adequate sun protection, food, or water, you really will not last long in this national park. There were more than 250 search and rescue members, comprising of full time staff and volunteers, that looked for both Rachel and Joseph for 9 days. They used dog teams, horse teams, and aircraft. But the terrain is so rough here, and more than 10 search personnel suffered injuries while conducting search operations, which is, I'm glad that everyone's okay, but this just goes on to show how crazy and rocky this terrain is. More than 10 people got injured while trying to look for Rachel and Joseph. They actually looked for over 2,100 hours out in Joshua Tree looking for this couple. Then, on August 6th, after evaluating the continuing risk to personnel versus the reward of finding the couple alive, the search team was scaled back to small weekend teams. So they kind of stopped the big search because they knew that this couple would likely not be alive and their searchers were getting hurt. So they had to weigh, the pros and cons of continuing this extremely large scale search. And the case went cold. I think searchers knew what the outcome was, that both of them had perished due to exposure and hyperthermia. But 11 weeks later, on October 15th, the bodies of Rachel and Joseph were found under a tree in a steep canyon area north of the park's Maze Loop trailhead, an area not accessible by vehicle. Rachel and Joseph had used their clothing to cover their lower extremities to protect them from the sun. And it also appeared from evidence at the scene that they had been rationing their food and that they had no water. There was also a handgun registered to Joseph that was located with the bodies. Joseph's father, Gilbert Orbeso, was among those who made the discovery and said that the two bodies were embracing. A sheriff's department spokeswoman, Cindy Bachman, confirmed that the bodies appeared to be interlocked. Now, this is what Joseph's father had to say. I feel that we have closure and we know we found them. That was our main goal, was to find them. Hopefully they can rest in peace now. Detectives learned that the couple had used hallucinogenic drugs prior to entering the park, and they found an apparent hallucinogenic mushroom in a backpack under Joseph's body. But it's really unclear if drugs played a role in their deaths. The toxicology test did not reveal any drugs in Joseph's system at the time of death. And a separate test on Rachel found trace elements of cannabis in her system, and detectives found two round plastic containers that might have been used to store marijuana, a drug that she actually had a medical license to consume. So, I don't know if the drugs played a role in their demise. I think most law enforcement officers would say yes. I think we all know it's not super safe to use drugs while you're in the wilderness, especially in Joshua Tree in the summer. However, it's unclear if, this was a factor in their deaths. Now, based on conversations with police, her family, Rachel's family, concludes that Rachel must have sustained a head injury on her hike during a slide or a fall in this remote area, and that required Joseph to care for her. So, this is like the theory that law enforcement and the families have. So basically, they assumed that Rachel had a head injury. I think I read where something had been tied to her head, like a piece of clothing. And so that maybe says she might have fallen and hurt her head. Now, they think that as the pair's water and rations began to dwindle while they waited for help that never came, Joseph, who carried his registered handgun as protection, he shot Rachel and then turned the gun on himself. So, that is basically what the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, that's their theory. Rachel's family has said that they hold no grudges against Joseph or the Obeso family. Rachel's t-shirt was found wrapped around her head like a bandage, and Joseph had removed his shirt to cover her legs and protect them from the sun and high heat. So this is just the theory, that someone had a terrible accident and they got stuck out there. Investigators believed the pair reached a point where they wanted to ease their own pain due to lack of water and her distress from her injury. It was a hot day, and Son Nguyen says that I wish that they had been better prepared. Until you are in the same situation, you don't know how you would react. And in a statement, Rachel's family said, quote, "We extend our heartfelt condolences to the Orbeso family and they will remain in our prayers," adding that they thank God that we'll be able to give Rachel a proper burial and lay her to rest. Mr. Orbeso's father said in an email to the Southern California News Group that he wants his son to be remembered as a kind, caring, and thoughtful person. Mr. Obeso said, quote, "The way he was found beside Rachel, holding her as they were seeking shade under the brush, says everything you need to know about him as a man and as a human being." So, despite this being pretty clear as to what happened, people were left with a lot of questions, and conspiracy theories still went crazy rampant on the internet. I found many people online with some interesting theories as to what, quote, really happened. People found it weird that he had a gun. Now, some people said that Joseph brought along the gun to protect Rachel from a stalker. This is what his parents said, citing an information and email from a third party. So there's still a lot of questions that have not been answered, and there's a lot of theories that still linger because this case wasn't like open and shut. It was open, and then it's still like there's closure, but it's not really done, right? Some people think that foul play is to blame. This was a comment that I found on Reddit. Quote, "Honestly, still can't rule out nefarious ending. It's still a possibility. Months had passed. Who knows what really happened? Shot her in the head, slid her down the cliff, wrapped her head in bandages to make it look like she injured herself. Empty water, eat some food, embracing her dead body while shooting himself to make it look like it was a sympathetic murder suicide. The thing is, I would still place the blame on the guy for causing her death. They said he wanted to take her to Joshua Tree for her birthday. He did not use common sense whatsoever. Perhaps he was high on drugs, who knows? Whenever I go hiking in an area with no cell reception, I put my phone in airplane mode. I carry it to use the camera, but also knowing that the GPS and compass app will still work so that you can cache your Google Maps and figure out how to get back." And then this person says, "I did this once when I was lost in the Inyo forest." Instead, this guy carries a gun question mark. So that was a really interesting post that I saw on Reddit. As we all know, anyone can say anything, and a lot of what this person said is pretty hurtful. This person's theory is that Joseph wanted to kill Rachel, and it was his plan to go to Joshua Tree, and he did this all on purpose. I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows the truth except Joseph and Rachel. And I don't know if we'll ever know. Now, someone else on Reddit said, "It sounds strange like everyone else has said. If your partner had an accident, I wouldn't think murder suicide is the way to go. One probably hike out trying to find for help for her, no? They're asking like that's strange. Personally, I think the case is solved, or whatever you wanna call it, but I don't know if we'll really know. The only people who know the truth will never be able to tell anyone. And this is where I throw in my plug for the 10 essentials. If you plan to go hiking anywhere, you need to have the 10 essentials. The first one is navigation, like a map, compass, or GPS system. The second is sun protection, sunglasses, sunscreen, and hats. The third one is insulation, jacket, hats, gloves, rain shell, and thermal underwear. The fourth is illumination, like flashlight, lanterns, or headlamps. The fifth is a first aid kit, first aid supplies. The sixth is fire, so something that you can start a fire, matches, lighter, or fire starters. You also need to have a repair kit and tools like duct tape, knife, screwdriver, and scissors. Think of like a multi tool. You also need to bring food and hydration, so water and water treatment supplies. Because you could run out of water, but if you have a filtration system, you can at least filter water to drink if you run out. You also need an emergency shelter. Think of like a tent, a space blanket, a tarp, or a bivy. So these are all things that you need to carry when you're outside hiking. It doesn't matter how well you know this area. It doesn't matter like how long the trail is or how easy it is. People get lost on trails that are less than a mile and they die outside. The nature does not mess around. And unfortunately, this case is an example of how things can go so poorly. Rachel, she didn't mean to trip or get hurt. She didn't plan for that. And that happens. Accidents happen outside, but you still have to prepare for anything that you think could happen. I'm really glad for their families that their bodies were found because I can't imagine what waiting those 11 weeks must have been like for Rachel's and Joseph's families. It must have been absolutely heartbreaking. And the fact that Joseph's dad is one of the first ones that found their bodies is really something that I don't see in a lot of cases. So I'm glad they were found, and I'm glad that their families got to lay them to rest in the ways that they wanted to. Joshua Tree is one of the most beautiful and unforgiving landscapes in America. It stretches out like another world, alien rocks, silent canyons, and heat that just doesn't just burn, it erases. For Rachel Nguyen and Joseph Orbeso, that beauty became a trap. They entered the park like thousands of others do every year, looking for peace, adventure, maybe a place to disconnect. But instead, they found themselves face to face with the brutal simplicity of survival. Their deaths aren't just a tragic story of a hike gone wrong, they're a reminder of how fragile we are when nature stops forgiving mistakes. Even love, even faith, even reason can fade out beneath that endless sun. The desert doesn't care who you are or how careful you've been. It only takes, quietly, completely, and without warning. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes places like Joshua Tree so haunting. Because behind the postcard beauty lies something deeper, a truth carved into sand, a whispered through the wind, that out here in the silence, not every story has a way home. As always, recreate responsibly and remember, sometimes the great outdoors aren't always great. Thanks for listening to Morbid Outdoors. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform. It's free, easy, and it helps us out immensely. When you subscribe, you get updates on our latest episodes, and it also boosts our visibility, making it easier for other curious souls to find us. Another great way to support Morbid Outdoors is by leaving us a review. Whether you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, a quick review helps us know what you love about the show. You can also join us on Patreon for early and ad free content. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Morbid Outdoors Podcast. You can email us case suggestions and your campfire stories at morbidoutdoorspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for the support, and I'll see you next time.